Hello, welcome to another Wednesday night of Mind to Mind. My name is Evelyn Njeri, and I am joined by my friend Dr. Daniel Claiborne, who is a psychologist. And tonight we are going to be discussing about ethics. And yeah, I will have to admit that when it comes to ethics, I think like if someone tells me ethics, I automatically think professional ethics, and we are going to find out that there is more to ethics. There is ethics in terms of relationships, there is ethics in terms of your work, and yeah, I hope you guys are excited. We have shared links on Facebook, Twitter. We're live on YouTube as well, LinkedIn, and we have also shared an outline that you guys can use to follow through the live with us. And yeah, introduce yourself, Dr. Daniel Claiborne. Welcome back.
Yes, I'm glad to be back. Um, Actually, just to mention, the outline Evelyn puts on for each of our programs. You can also access previous programs. And if you ever have more questions, you read the outline or you want a copy of an article that might go with the outline, just let Evelyn know, and we can definitely provide that. Or if you have a specific question, I think Evelyn can provide my email
Mhm.
address, and I'd be very happy to answer specific questions or elaborate on some of our topics. So, anyway, we're definitely glad to be back, and we'll be
Yeah.
back again in 2 weeks on that Wednesday. So, we're excited about today's topic of ethics, personal ethics, and we're ready.
Yes, we are. And I just thought about it, and this is actually our 19th episode.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that gets me so excited. Like um when you say you're gonna start something and then you start and then you always wonder about how it's gonna go.
Hmm.
And by a year, and now this is our 19th episode, and we are slowly growing our channel. We have been able to reach so many people on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and people are able to access all these videos and they are online. So yeah, that makes me excited. Thank you
I'm
so much.
glad you counted them. I know we've been doing this for more than a year, but we've
Mhm.
missed some of our weeks because of technical problems or health problems or whatever. So, but we're trying to do it every other week. And if our technical issues and health and all of those things stay in good shape, we will. But 19, wow, it doesn't
Yeah,
seem like it's been that many.
yeah,
But
we've
that's
done.
good. I published a book of my essays that I've been doing for my newspaper the other day, and it has 81 essays. I do them every other week for my newspaper for the last 3 years. And I'm into the 80s now in terms of the number of essays. And when I think back, it just doesn't seem possible that I could have written 80 essays. But,
Yeah.
uh, little by little, it does happen.
Mm-hmm. And now you have a book.
Yes, it's available on Amazon. It's called Caring for the Mind, and it's $14.
Mhm.
Um, but yes, you can order it on Amazon, and I'm continuing to write the essays, so hopefully at some point there will be another book. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's fun to do. Ethics is one of my favorite topics because I happen to be the chairman for the ethics committee of our psychological association here in the state of Kansas. And so
Mm-hmm.
other psychologists will occasionally call me with
Mm-hmm.
questions about how to solve an ethical dilemma with
Mm-hmm.
maybe one of their patients or something, or perhaps a health insurance company or something like that. So, but as Evelyn mentioned earlier, today we're going to be focusing really more on personal ethics, what it means to behave ethically just in our personal lives with our spouses, our friends, our children, our parents, um, also at work, but particularly in our personal lives. Um, for many years, thousands of years, going back to the Greeks and other early religions, um, ethics was seen as something that if a person behaved ethically, that made himself or herself feel better as a person. It wasn't to benefit the person that you're treating ethically. Like we think of it today, today we think of it being, if you're ethical, you're protecting the other person or the consumer. But for
Mhm.
thousands of years, ethics was thought as something that made the person acting ethically feel good and have virtue and have respect and have a sense of contentment about who they are and just all sorts of good mental health feeling
Yeah.
that come from acting in an ethical way. So that's really one of our points today, that it helps all of us to be acting ethically, whatever that
Mhm.
means for the person. Does that
Yeah.
make
Come to
sense to
think
you?
of it. Mhm.
Yeah.
Come to think of it, when I am okay with others, I feel more calm and content.
Uh,
If I don't act ethically, or maybe I'm dishonest about something, it makes me anxious and
mhm,
guilty and ashamed, and I don't think that is good for my mental health at all.
right. And
Yeah.
one of the other people, so to speak, that as you're referring to, is God, or some set of principles that you know about. And so we also often have a relationship with a supernatural being, and we feel better if we're living in accord with the teachings of that person or that supernatural being, whether
Yeah.
it could be Jesus or Allah or
Mhm.
Confucius or Buddha or whoever. We have a relationship with them too. I
Yeah.
like what you're saying about feeling more comfortable if you know you're on good terms with others.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Speaking of religion, it's Ramadan season for our dear Muslim brothers and sisters, and we wish you a happy Ramadan season. And um, I do have friends like from different religions, and like for example, right now, for people now going through the Ramadan season, there are certain principles even when you're working with them. They don't they don't do certain things. They don't work up to certain um like there are times when they go to pray, and as much as, like, for example, like I am a Christian, I don't understand it, but it's like I wouldn't be the person who is coming in between what is important for someone else,
oh yeah.
or make feel like what is important to them it's not important at all, because we need to, like, I don't know, like give um respect to what someone else believes, and also there are things they cannot do, there are clothes they cannot wear, like just having the respect for what another person believes.
hmm Yeah, maybe one of our ethical principles on a personal level might be not to be judgmental.
Yeah.
So that may be something we do try to live up to. On our
Mhm.
outline, there I listed on the first page some ethical principles that are not necessarily based in religion, but a lot of times the professional ethics are based on these principles. And I'll let me just read what they are. The first one is do good in your
Mhm.
actions. The second one, along with that, is do no harm,
Mhm.
if possible. Third one is um, be honest and truthful.
Yeah.
Um, the fourth one is what we call informed consent. So, in other words, if you're getting into some kind of arrangement with another person, make sure they're fully informed about everything that's implied in that arrangement so that nothing takes them by surprise.
Yeah.
Uh, Another principle would be justice or fairness, to try to be just or fair in our actions towards others. Um,
Mhm.
Another one is called fidelity. In other words, uh, being loyal and true to your principles. So, in other words, if you are in an arrangement, let's say it's a marriage or a friendship, or you have a certain understanding with the other person, then fidelity means that you obey that, you you follow that, you don't betray that. And the
Yeah.
last one is respecting the other person's autonomy, which is what Evelyn was mentioning earlier about respecting differences that
Yeah.
people have, whether they're religion or personality or whatever they may be. Kind of respecting that that other person has a right to their own view of the world and their own way of being a person. So
Mhm.
those are some principles that you find in ethics codes that are not necessarily religious, but each in their own way keeps problems from happening in those relationships. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, it really does. So, would you say that some of these ethics, the values and the principles that we're speaking about, would you say that they come from like the like an individual's beliefs and values and virtues?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Would you say like the code of ethics that a human being has is derived from their values, their personal values, their beliefs and their virtues?
Yes, it could be their own personal values, or it could be things that are just universally understood to be good, like honesty, um, respect, um, do good, do no harm. I mean, in almost all civilizations and all religions, some of those basic values are there.
Yeah. And you can find a lot of similarities in different religions. You'll find, like, for example, you'll find that things like fidelity, honesty, like they are so in line with other religions. But you'll find like um, other people have different value systems that don't apply to
Mhm.
other religions or beliefs.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between ethical guidelines and rituals. So religions may have certain rituals and behaviors that are approved of, but
Mhm.
ethics is a little different. It has more to do with the principles behind the rituals. Why do we do these rituals? And the other interesting thing Evelyn and I were talking about earlier was that often when we're trying to decide what's the ethical thing to do, it can be difficult if some of the ethical principles are kind of clashing with each other. For example, you
Mhm.
might want to be honest with a friend, but on the other hand, you don't want to hurt their feelings. And so um, you have to decide. We've all been through this many times. Where do I go ahead and say something that's honest, give them honest feedback, or do maybe it's not that important and I go with not harming them? So do I do? When I get calls from other psychologists about figuring out ethical dilemmas, it's almost always where two or three ethical principles do not agree with each other in this particular case. Like
Yeah.
a client tells me something, and have promised to keep our sessions confidential. But
Mm-hmm.
what the person tells me is that they're about to harm another person, a specific other person. And
Yeah.
that, then I have to think, gosh, I promised to keep things confidential. That's one ethical principle, but I also don't want people to be harmed. So that's
Yeah.
another ethical principle. So they clash. So what we do in the field of ethics when things like that clash is, most importantly, we try to talk to some other person about it just to clarify our thinking,
Mm-hmm.
and that often helps. Sometimes one ethical principle is more important than the other one. For
Yeah.
example, um, if you're thinking about being honest with a friend, let's say you have a good friend who is married, and you observe out in public at some point their spouse being romantic with another person.
Mm-hmm.
So, you tell your friend, um, which may hurt them, but then again, it's truthful.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do we do? It's not always clear cut, and there's no necessarily absolute right answer each time. That's why we have to discuss this with some other person and think, gosh, what ethical principles do I want to operate on here?
Sometimes you find like if like let's say like the romantic issue, you will find that if you speak maybe to another friend about what you saw just to get a guideline, so it sounds like that is now three other people who know the situation before the other,
Hmm.
before now your friend. And
Hmm.
by the time now they're finding out, if in case you decide like you don't want to do any harm and you don't tell them, but to them when they find out, they might think, they might feel like they were fooled and they were not told, and everyone else knew and they felt like they were making a fool out of themselves.
Hmm.
On the other hand, this situation could go differently, and you might decide to tell your friend, and maybe they knew but they decided not to say, but the fact that you knew but they cannot, they don't want to, let's say, confront their spouse, because maybe there are all these other reasons that they want to keep the relationship,
Hmm.
so they pretend either they don't know or they have had the fight, but now friendships dictate that now they'll start asking you like, why are you still with this person when they're doing this to you, and you have already decided that you don't want to leave. So they might have a backlash on now the friend who is coming to be honest, and what they're not doing to their spouse or how they're not confronting the spouse end up giving now the friend the backlash. So I
Yeah,
guess,
some people have honesty as such a strong principle that if they can't be honest, they just won't do anything. So they
yeah,
wouldn't say anything if they can't be truthful. That's one
yeah,
way of handling it.
yeah.
Other times, people are more flexible and have several different ethical principles, and well, yeah, I think Evelyn said something before the program started that was good, and that is that some of the ways we decide these ethical dilemmas is based on the person that we know that we're dealing with. Some
Mhm.
people can handle more direct information and honesty, and other people can't. And so some of it, what's ethical, depends on the audience, the person that we're considering.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I was saying was that like you find some people like some of like especially like us women, we discuss some of these things, and maybe it will come up in a topic and you're like, if, or maybe like one of us experiences a situation and it brings up like a situation where everyone is discussing like what they would want in such a particular situation. And like for me, I would prefer if my friend tells me, because I think I would feel so ashamed, like I'm acting, or I believe that my relationship is fine and someone is making a fool out of me, and I'm the last one to find out. And yet there's another person who feels like they wouldn't know what to do with that information immediately. So not unless now, like, it's really really out of hand and they finally find out. I think it also depends with someone's temperament. They feel like especially this ethical question becomes really really hard when, let's say, the relationship gets to a point where now there's marriage, there are kids involved. And, like, for example, if your friend finds out, your friend, and your friend told you, like, in such a situation, like, they will leave the person. And now you, who has found out, if I tell my friend this situation, first of all, it is going to result to my friend leaving the husband or the wife. And these kids, I will always feel guilty that the reason why their parents are not together is because of something I said. So yeah, I think also the person who is in that situation becomes, like, gets into such a tough situation. Like, it becomes really difficult.
I think that's a really good way to put it. Is it sometimes can be very complicated
Yeah.
and all sorts of ramifications that in terms of one's actions. Um, and so that's why it's good to just talk this out with another independent person if you can. Just sometimes that helps us figure out what is the more. So one principle sometimes in the complicated situations is you pick the path that if it doesn't work out well, it's reversible. So some things you might do, once you do them, they're never reversible. It changes everything. And others are more partial steps that if it turns out they're not helpful, you can actually modify them or pull them back and reverse them. Sometimes that's a way of handling these things.
Yeah. Like in that situation, some people choose, instead of telling their friend, they confront their spouse first and come to an understanding of what exactly did they see. Because sometimes you find that situation people have different ways of interpreting situations, and you need to first of all confirm that you are right about what you think you need to tell.
You know,
So sometimes you may see something that doesn't seem that seems a certain way that maybe has a different explanation. And if you I think it's better to first of all make sure that what you saw is correct. But there are some that are so straightforward, like you can really tell that whatever you're seeing is exactly that. But if the situation doesn't is not clear, I think it's important to make sure that you're really really sure before you open up, or you're honest about whatever it is you saw, because you might
mhm.
start up something that maybe has a different explanation. I don't know, it's just my
I
take.
think gathering more information is almost always helpful.
Yeah.
It can't hurt if you have time to do it. It's not if it's an emergency situation, you may have to act quickly, but yes, gathering more information is very helpful.
Yeah.
That's why also talking to some other person about your dilemma, sometimes they'll actually bring up another point or a point of view that you hadn't considered before, and that's helpful.
Sometimes I've seen in movies where in such a situation, like the friend confronts the spouse and tells the spouse to be honest with the partner, gives them a chance to open up themselves and tell the truth before they are forced to. Because,
Mhm.
like, if for example, like, I found my friend's spouse with someone else, I go and tell the spouse that you need to tell my friend the truth, and I'm giving you the chance to do it, because I don't want to be the one to say it. I'm giving you the chance to give an explanation to them what exactly I saw here, because I also cannot pretend that I didn't see that and I don't want to see my friend getting hurt.
Yeah,
So, like, you give the spouse the chance to say the truth. But if now they decide not to, then you um at liberty to to do it. I don't know.
right. That's a really good point. Back on the outline for a minute, let's look at how some people in the past, what they've thought about what makes something ethical. The
Mhm.
ancient Greeks thought that a person acting ethically built up virtue in the person, that, by acting ethically. And one of their principles was doing the right thing the right way to the right degree and at the right time. So I've always liked that. You think, am I doing this the right way? Am I doing it to the right degree? Is this
Mhm.
the right time? That kind of thinking. Um, Plato, his ideas were fairness, um, let's see here, calmness, and moderation. The early Greek philosophers were very big on doing things in moderation. That was one of their ethical principles. Um,
Mhm.
Aristotle called acting ethically as excellence in action. So it was kind of like almost like a sport, like being excellent in the way that you use your own ethical principles. So you are pure and you're faithful to your own ethical principles, whatever they might be.
Mhm.
Um, so those are all kind of good tips. Religion has focused on things like compassion, being compassionate, humility, being humble, honesty, uh, kindness, um, not being non-judgmental,
Mhm.
um, being socially responsible to the welfare of others, things like that. I mean, different religions have focused on different uh, ethical guidelines, like the Old Testament in Christianity has the Ten Commandments,
Mhm.
and other things. The New Testament has, turn the other cheek and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Um,
Like
other religions have
love your neighbor
similar
as you love
things.
yourself.
What was that, Evelyn?
Love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes. Hmm. Yeah.
And I like the first principle that you said, like doing the right thing in the right way at the right time in the right moderation. And I think that's one of the things that I have been finding out, like recently, even professionally. You find that sometimes you may want to correct something. You want to be honest, you want um to say something, but it's not the right time to say it. And
Uh-huh.
by the time you're saying it, it will do more harm than good.
Right.
um yeah, for example, like if you're in a high pressure situation at work and you have different people, you like, for example, something goes wrong and it's something you can solve, and then you want to go and tell your boss about it on top of all the other things that are going on. I think, like, yeah, you do want to say at this you do want to tell them the truth, and but the time is not right, or maybe they didn't handle, let's say they didn't handle one of the employees right, and you would like to point it out because it's going to bring issues, like, let's say later on at work and everything. um first of all, how you say it is very important. Secondly, it if you guys are in a high pressure situation, it might not be the right time.
Hmm.
Then again, you also have to figure out whether the person is capable of listening to you and hearing what you're saying.
Uh-huh.
Because sometimes, like, you trying to do something nice can end up getting you off the corner office to the to that little desk in the corner, because of how you're doing things and how you're saying things. And also maybe like the off timing. Sometimes people quit their jobs because of a situation that happens, but when you really look at a 360 angle of the whole situation, then maybe you were just I don't know, collateral damage of the whole situation. So I'm not saying like you should agree to be treated badly, but sometimes you might end up like there's more to the situation than just what is happening to you.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's good to wait before you voice some things.
I think that's a very good analysis. I mean, how to convey the information? Do I send an email? Do I make a phone call? Do I talk to the person in person? Uh, when is the right timing? Do I wait? That maybe, like Evelyn says, the person's not feeling well. They're under a lot of pressure. Maybe they wouldn't be able to hear it clearly. Um, and then, doing the right thing is maybe the hardest part. Is
Mhm.
this something I should do or not? No matter whether I do time it differently or have a different method of doing it. Should I do it at all? Is there an alternative? Yeah, very complicated. Um, I think we all do this in life. I mean, we make these decisions. We may not think of them consciously, but we figure those things into a lot of what we do. But
Yeah.
ethics means that we really are a little more conscious of what are our principles. And you could maybe
Mhm.
look at a list of principles and you could rate them like the ones we read at first, like do no harm and do good. And in my case, I would rate do good higher than do no harm, but they're
Mhm.
both important. And then um, being faithful to my principles, I would rate that a little bit lower on the list, but they're all good. They're all important. But if they clash, which
Yeah.
one do we want to go with in terms of our own sense of identity and to feel really honorable and good about ourselves?
So how do you handle a situation where other people have different values that are contradicting to your own principles? Like they have different principles that are contradicting your own principles, and maybe their principles are hurting you.
Well, I do think you have to take that into consideration. And sometimes you might have to say to the person, from my value system where I come from, here's what I would say. But I realize your value system and your religion or background are different. So I'm not sure, but I wanted to be honest with you about what I think from my point of view. So you can qualify it that way. Um,
Okay.
a good
So
example right now, in that we all know about in the world, is that the way Israel is pursuing Hamas.
mhm,
Their point of view is Hamas did this horrible thing to us. We have to wipe them out. And even
mhm,
if many, many civilians get killed in the process, it's not something we brought on ourselves. And for our very survival, we have to keep going with this pursuit of Hamas. But then other people might look at that situation and think the killing of the innocent civilians is the bigger sin. It's the
Yeah.
bigger problem, and it is not justified by what happened. I mean, so yes, I think Evelyn, you're bringing up a good point. Different people have different systems of ethics and different things that are priorities, maybe you might say.
I think I'd like to call upon our viewers tonight and share some of the ethical dilemmas that you've ever
Hmm.
come across and how you handle them.
Hmm.
Don't forget to share, like, comment, and yeah, we'd like to know what kind of ethical dilemmas have you ever come across and how did you solve them? Did you solve them? Or maybe you're dealing with an ethical dilemma right now. Maybe we can help. You really never know. And we'll be live, I think, in the next, until the next, we'll be live until 8. So, yeah, we still have time. So, share any ethical dilemma that
Hmm.
you've ever come across that you'd like us to share. And let's have a conversation about this. This is
Hmm.
interesting.
Well, another one, not so much about honesty. Another
Mm-hmm.
one would be, let's say, about faithfulness. So let's say you're married to someone and you've made a vow to be faithful to that person. And
Mm-hmm.
then yet you're on a business trip and you meet another person and you don't do anything inappropriate, but you realize that other person is a much better match for you. And you even have emotional feelings of love toward that person. So, how to handle that? On the one hand, you have these emotions towards this new individual
Mm-hmm.
that are more powerful than the emotions you have toward your spouse. But on the other hand, you made a promise to your spouse to be faithful. And so, do you honor that previous promise, or do you honor your feelings of passion about this new individual? So, sometimes it's not about honesty, it can be about promises, about like a promise you may have made. Um, yeah, I think that's a good idea if people could send us some of the dilemmas that they've run into. Uh,
Yeah. I
we all
think
want.
this,
I think
yeah,
most of us want to do the right thing,
yeah.
however that's defined in ourself as a person, and that can be different from one person to another.
Yeah. I think for me personally, I will follow the principle of promise. Like, I made a promise to this person to be faithful to them. And I would also question those feelings because I'd be like, is it that they give me something that I am lacking in my relationship? And this is something that I didn't know that I was lacking,
Uh-huh.
and I would use that opportunity to go and communicate how I'm feeling to my spouse and
Yeah.
see how I can improve what I've already built with this person.
Mhm.
Because you can say that this one person has all the qualities that my spouse has, plus the things that now are attracting me to them.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you forget, you may be going for 20%, you may be lacking 20% in your relationship. Then you meet a new person who's giving you this 20, and just because you've been lacking the 20%, it seems like a huge deal to you that you forget the other 80%. And sometimes that can blind you to making the wrong choice of betraying your spouse. I don't know.
That's a really good solution. As a matter of fact, in therapy, that's often what we recommend is to go back to the original person and say, I've been awakened now to some new things that are meaningful to me and very important. And I would like to see if we can have those in our relationship.
Yeah.
Try that first. That would be an example of doing the thing, something at the right time and in the right way. I like that very much.
Yeah. I think there's I don't know, there's one person who ever told me that you will never lack to meet new people who you have chemistry with. It could be intellectual, it could be an intellectual chemistry, it could be a spiritual chemistry, it could be even sexual, whatever it is. But that cannot stop you from having, I don't know, being faithful to the promise that you had before, because that could be only like us, like let's say 1% of, it could be 1%, and it won't, they won't be the last person that will make you feel excited about something. It's
Mhm.
just the human nature of, I don't know, getting excited about, like you see the thing where we lie and say that you will never meet someone you're attracted to just because you said I do to one person. That is not true. The truth is you will meet people who excite you one way or the other and you have chemistry with them, but you have to have the principles and the faithfulness to keep your promise to the person you decided to be with, because there's a reason as to why you chose them specifically and not anyone else.
I think another principle that you might want to have in a relationship like that is the understanding with the other person that, oh, we're going to be together many years. If anything changes, I will let you know. So there's that kind of promise, not a promise to never change, but a promise that if life brings things about that make me change or my feelings in some way, I will let you know. So that
Yeah,
that could be a promise that you can hold to.
yeah. And I think sometimes, like, I think this is the reason as to why, like, it's really important to discuss certain issues as they arise. Like, for example, I think one of the things that makes people attracted to new people is because you're trying to run away from problems in your relationship. Because you might be sweeping things under the rug. Like, there's a problem in your relationship, you don't solve it. Another
Mhm.
arise, you don't solve it. Then another one, maybe like when you fight with your spouse, it's not a healthy fight, so you decide to withdraw because you don't want confrontation. Then it reaches a point where you are building resentment towards your spouse, and now you start seeking compassion from other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing we always know about our relationships, whether it's friends or romantic relationships or whatever, that each person continues to evolve. We continue
Mhm.
to change and evolve, and so we have to renegotiate our understanding with each other if we're going to keep that relationship going in the long
Yeah.
run. So nothing can ever be static
Yeah.
because we're all changing and learning and being exposed to new things, not just good things, but also challenges. Let's say health issues come up, or you get fired from your job, or then we have to adjust. We're always adjusting to
Yeah.
things that happen to us.
Hmm. I think that also presents another ethical problem that happens in relationships. Um, we find that, like, maybe I think this is a complaint that I've had in Kenya a lot. I don't know whether it applies to America as well. And you find that if a lady loses their job, the man will hold her down and maybe even give her money for investment and everything. But if a guy loses his job, like, most of them end up losing their spouses as well, because it depends with the foundation of the relationship, whether it was built on what the guy has or whether they actually really love each other. So you
Mhm.
find that if the woman maybe is making more money, like, a lot of guys are afraid if the woman is making more money, they will treat their spouse badly, or if the spouse end up losing their job, they might end up like, if the husband end up losing their job, they might end up getting ill treatment, like in the house, because, oh, you didn't pay rent, now the house is mine, oh, don't use that cup, like, certain things like that.
Mhm.
So I think, what is the ethical principle, like I think it brings now that ethical principle of, like, I'm in a season of luck, and this is where you promise to hold me down, like according to our promises in our marriage vows, for richer, for poor, for
So one
pure.
ethical principle would be, do I keep my promises?
Yeah,
Another one would be, am I honest? So on the
yeah,
one hand, if I keep my promises, even if I changed or became aware of new possibilities, I would hold to my old promises. But the
hmm,
honesty principle would be, if I change and I am exposed to something new and exciting, I will tell you. So
yeah,
those are interesting ethical principles. One that we haven't talked about is simply honesty in the sense of um, like stealing. Like if I find somebody's wallet in a restaurant, do I keep it and take the money out of it for myself? Or do I turn it into the restaurant so that maybe they can return it to the owner? I mean,
yeah,
um, we all know that in most religions, you shouldn't steal. Stealing
yeah,
is a bad thing.
yeah,
Um, Murder
hmm,
is generally understood to be bad.
hmm,
But then again, soldiers on the battlefield have to shoot and kill enemy soldiers. So they have to come to terms with a clash between the values, I mean, thou shalt not kill, and
hmm,
the kind of realistic demands of being a soldier. Um,
yeah.
I think we're faced with a lot of ethical dilemmas if we stop and
Oh,
think about it all through life.
yeah. You've just brought up an ethical issue that is going on in the country right now. So you do realize what's going on with Haiti,
Uh-huh.
what's happening with Haiti right now. So the Kenyan government is wants to send the Kenyan police, not the not the army, the Kenyan local police, to Haiti to help out with the situation. And a lot of queries are coming, and a lot of people have an issue with that because they feel like you're taking people to their death. Because quite honestly, they don't like, a lot of Kenyans feel like our police are not highly trained for
Oh,
that kind of fight,
hmm.
and others feel like it will be a good opportunity for them to practice being
Oh,
ethical, because they also use their power negatively here in Kenya. So maybe they will get a chance to actually do a good thing. It's creating an ethical question all over the country, and everyone has their own perspective on how, like, whether it's a good or bad thing, and whether the president is making a good decision or not.
hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing is true in our country. I mean, largely we're a Christian country, but we're sending arms and weapons and ammunition to Ukraine to help,
Mhm.
you know, so that we have different competing principles, and we have to make those decisions among those principles. Probably one of the highest level principles is simply self protection. I mean, I think with most people, even at a biological level, we have kind of an instinct for self protection.
Yeah, because you see, like, I think um I remember, like, I was talking to someone yesterday, and they were saying, like, if they were the local police, they would, and this is an instruction coming from above, they will resign, because they feel that they are not
Hmm.
trained for that kind of situation.
Uh-huh.
And I think one of the ethical dilemma that's going on is that, is it really ethical to send soldiers who are not trained for that kind of battle
Uh-huh. Right.
into that kind of war, and without any previous um, training or even experience?
Hmm.
you know.
Well, and in global affairs like in Israel or Haiti, or we have, what's moral to do, what's politically expedient to do, what's efficient, what's effective. There's so
Yeah.
many different ways to look at those decisions.
Hmm.
You know, well, this has been a really interesting discussion. I do hope that some people will send in, even in between now and our next program, any ethical dilemmas that they have faced now that we've talked about this,
Yeah.
because we could take some time in our next program to answer those, to address those questions.
Yes, we will. This has been interesting. I feel like I had to go into my mind and really think about some of these things. But in the true sense, when I'm faced with an ethical dilemma, it takes me through the exact same process where I am like, what do I do?
Huh?
What do I really,
Well, the
what
first
am
thing
I
I,
supposed
I always recommend, well, two things really. One is to think about what are the ethical principles that are kind of colliding. And then
to
the
do?
second is to talk to another person. It doesn't have to be an expert. You talk to the other person, you say, well, on the one hand, I want to be honest, but on the other hand, I don't want to hurt this person. But on the
Hmm.
other hand, I want to feel like I've done something responsible. And it's not that the other person can tell us what to do, but it's just that sometimes verbalizing this, laying it out that way and thinking about it helps us realize what our priority might be. And
Yeah.
also, like Evelyn was saying earlier, is it the right time? How to do it? Uh,
Hmm.
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess some
Well,
decisions are not that easy to make.
mhm.
Yeah.
we may
Wow. It's
we
been
may
amazing.
change our minds, but Evelyn and I were thinking about our next program being on facing our limits. As we go through life at every stage, beginning in infancy, really, where we run up against something we are limited about. Something we can't do, we can't change, we can't control. It could be
Hmm.
health, it could be just all sorts of things. And so, how do we handle when we collide with one of our limitations?
Yeah.
So
And
anyway, we might.
sometimes,
What
sorry,
is Evelyn?
that has really reminded me something. Sometimes you might think you're limited, but that's an opportunity to actually realize that you have more limits to something. Like you
Uh,
may think your limitation is here, but if you push yourself further, you might realize you have more room than you thought you did.
mhm.
So when we look about limitations, we might we might also decide to talk about that as well, because that's something
Yeah,
I have about myself recently.
right. Yeah, we can learn from our limits. We can test them. We can accept them.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it'll be a really good discussion. And if anybody has ideas, this will be 2 weeks from now. If anybody has ideas about that, send them to Evelyn, and we'll put them in the program.
Yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you guys for joining us. And if you would like to watch any of our previous episodes, this is episode 19. We have more episodes online. If you're watching us from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, or even YouTube, you will find all these videos posted online. We've discussed so many topics like love, toxic relationships. We've discussed friendship. We've discussed happiness. Like how do you like how what makes you happy? How do you stay happy? Like all these issues. And yeah, sometimes I give some of my personal experiences. And yeah,
Hmm.
we live, we learn, and we improve ourselves and we grow. And that's the principle of the holistic well-being. This has been Mind to Mind. Thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank
have
you
a
all.
lovely day.
You bet. Thank you too. Bye.
Bye bye.